Okay, are you ready, George?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Three, two, and one. Welcome back, everyone, to Aaron's Opinion. We are joined this evening now by our new guest, our next guest here, George Zavala. Hoping I'm saying the last name right, Zavala. And I just saw a post about you in one of the blindness communities about, well, basically about your show, your podcast that you do. So, I've never heard of you before, but I'm really pleased to have met you. And tell me about yourself. Who is George Zavala? And then you can get into your life story, your podcasting, all the different things that you do. So just wherever you want to take the conversation, just go for it, and I'll interject as I need to. Your hour starts now, basically. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Aaron Richmond. So basically, yeah, I've been doing podcasting for a while. First of all, about myself, I was born low vision since birth in 2008. My vision went worse, or got worse actually, where like light perception and cataracts and whatnot. And then in 2011, I got surgery to remove the cataracts, and the vision got better to where I didn't use my cane anymore. Then in 2012, I was in a car accident, passenger, was ICU and all that good jazz. And then my vision went back to light perception, so that's where I'm at now. I have light perception. I just see shadows once in a while. I see ghosts. I tell my wife that. And I have a prosthetic right eye. But with me, I've always been into technology. And I've been in podcasting for, I want to say 10 years. Actually, at first, I was on an internet radio show. And then gradually got into my own projects. One of them was called the Accessibility Corner. And my thought on that, on the Accessibility Corner, is like a grocery store. You know, you go to a corner store, you have your snacks, your drinks, your candy, everything's at one place. Well, with this Accessibility Corner, that's what I want to do. Bring everything into one spot, like, podcasting, resources. That I've been doing for, I want to say 6-7 years. And then, of course, I come and go. You get bored, you lose focus, work and life and whatnot. Then recently, I just started another podcast called, I'm sorry. It was Accessibility Corner, and then I went into what's called No Vision Internet Radio. Did that for a while, and then I'm transitioning now. You got to change the brand sometimes, I'm changing it now to what's called Let's Talk Stuff. And that's basically a platform where we could just talk about everything, accessibility, sports, all that stuff into one area, one platform. So that's what I've been doing lately regarding podcasting. Technology-wise, I'm an accessible technology consultant. I'm waiting to be on board with as a vendor here in Texas, where I'm from, and hopefully that'll come true. That takes a while. Anyone that's listening knows about the state. So that's been in the process for like a year and a half. So it's coming to the end for that process. It's in the procurements right now. So hopefully within the next few weeks, I guess, I'll be a vendor for the state where I'll teach. Basically, it's called OIB, individuals independent living, older individuals. I'm sorry, like over 55. I'll be teaching them how to use an iPhone, and then let me ask you this, Mr. Aaron. Are you familiar with the Lighthouse for the Blind?
I have heard of it. I'm familiar with it. Spoken on my show with at least one person that works there, and so I'm familiar with it. Not done much with it, but familiar with it a little. Yes.
So here in El Paso, we had the El Paso Lighthouse for the Blind. Basically, that's a building, a facility that facilitates a lot of programs like orientation, independent living, all that stuff into one area. Ours closed here in El Paso in 2012, 2013. So me and two other individuals this year, we opened up what's called the El Paso Vibe, which is VIBE, which stands for Visually Impaired and Blind Experience. So basically, we're trying to feed that gap that the Lighthouse left. So right now we have a facility that has a simulation room, has a bed like a bedroom, and we have a computer lab. which is quite robust. If I can honestly say, it's one of the best computer labs in this area. Outside, of course, environments, educational environments. We have like a little conference room, and then we also have a big conference or a big, I guess, like a break area where we allow, or we actually don't allow, but we encourage local advocacy groups here in El Paso, like the El Paso Council for the Blind, the National Federation of the Blind, to come in and have their meetings in a safe, quiet environment. So that's what I've been doing lately with El Paso Vibe, and that's kind of, it's interesting. It's a process, and I get to meet a lot of individuals that need help. Unfortunately, sometimes we fall between the cracks, and we just need that little hand up to get back into the race.
Absolutely. Yeah, great entrance, great entry, by the way. You've been jumping around a lot, George. So, which is great, which is what I want. So let's go back to, you say that you've been in podcasting for 10 years.
Yes, sir.
So now, I've only been podcasting for a little over 3 years, but how did you get started in podcasting 10 years ago, and what was that like? And the other thing I want to learn more about is internet radio. It's a very interesting facet of media today, and I actually am planning on and hoping to work towards doing more, helping out more in the internet radio section with my podcasting skills. So talk about, let's do a bit more of a deep dive into your first podcast episode 10 years ago, and then how it morphed into the internet radio, and really talk about that. I'm really interested in that.
So for podcasting, for me, it started 10 years ago, just by happenstance, actually. I wasn't really on Facebook. I don't know how it came to be, but it was a gentleman. He's still on Facebook. Aaron Linson, real nice gentleman out of Kentucky. I'm trying to think how we got involved. But anyways, he sent me an email, said, "Would you like me to be part of this podcast?" It's talking about technology, specifically Android. So back then I had a little bit of vision. It was after the accident, so I was gradually losing it. And I think one of the individuals some listeners might know, because I know right now currently he's on the AppleVis, Mike Malarski. He was one of the co-hosts with me. He's currently on the AppleVis. And that was 10 years ago. We kind of got it talking about technology and how accessibility is incorporated with Android. And of course, little by little by iPhone. Be honest with you, I was I was not too fond of the iPhone back in the day, because I didn't realize the potential, right? So when I started using the iPhone, that's where I got involved into more podcasting myself. So it went from podcasting with Aaron Linson and Mike Malarsi, and then I transitioned. Right after that, a friend of mine here in El Paso, where I'm from, El Paso, Texas, he had an internet radio show called Dialogue. And so he goes, "You know what, come on here." I want to say 2014. He was, "Come on here and talk about what you want to talk about when it regards to accessibility." And he had a little studio at his home. And so basically, it was live. It was a live show, which I like. I prefer a live show because it's more spontaneous, like what we're doing now. And so I did that from 2014 to 2016 regarding the accessibility corner. That's where the concept came into play. And so I would have guests on from local agencies and nonprofits, and we would talk about their services. And also, what I did, Mr. Aaron, I incorporated accessibility and the local politics or politicians or candidates. The reason why at that time I was part of what's called Rev Up Texas. It's a nonpartisan initiative to encourage voters with disabilities to go out there and vote. So what I would do is invite politicians or candidates that were running for office and talk about accessibility. How do they plan to incorporate that in their plan, in their discussions? So I did that for a while, and then in 2016 to 2017, I went on my own. I did the accessibility corner, and then that's when I transitioned to the No Vision Internet Radio. The No Vision Internet Radio, I was trying to do, and I'm still trying, is like what you said, Mr. Aaron, develop an internet radio where it's more of a variety. And what I mean by that is, I don't know if some of your listeners will know, but back when I was in Dallas, 'cause I used to work for the Department of Labor, 2010 to 2012, when I got into a car accident, there was a thing in North Texas called North Texas Radio. And what they would do is provide you with a little radio, and you take it home, you plug it in, it's already set to the station, and they would have variety shows like reading books and newspapers, and have variety shows like comedy. I found that very interesting. I'm like, wow, that's pretty neat. So I want to bring that concept back here in El Paso, using live radio, or so to speak, live broadcast. And I found an app called Mixler, Mixlr, which enables you to run a live show without having to be too fancy when it comes to the technology. What I mean by that, folks, is running the internet radio is difficult because you have the back end. You have the servers, you have the shoutcast, you have all that stuff in the background, whereas Mixler will allow me to do it without having to be too smart. I have to be the sharpest tool in the shed for that. But podcasting for me, Aaron, is important for me because it allows people to have those conversations that might impact them. For example, I did one recently regarding independent living skills, and I think people need to hear that. Not only us, but our support system, which means our parents, our spouses, our relatives, to understand that we need help in some areas, but most of all, we could do stuff on our own. And so that's what I've been doing regarding podcasting. I hope to continue with it. When I first started, so that your listeners know, if you're interested in getting into podcasting, about my first mic, it was called a Snowball, a little mic. And when I bought it,
Yeti, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm on the, as you can hear, I'm on the Yeti right now, not the Snowball, but the main broadcasting one that just sits on my desk. Yeah, I love the Yeti sound. Yeah, definitely.
So just to let you know, who are listening, interested in getting into podcasting, which is great. On the side note, the reason why podcasting is so cool, I guess, because you have your own platform. You could just sit in front of your computer, do a recording and put it into Spotify or these other podcast hosts that will distribute it to other different platforms. But going back to my original thought, so when I bought my first Snowball, I'm like, cool, this is it. That's all I need. And the young man that was helping us, he turned to my wife. He goes, this is not the last thing, right? You're going to buy more. I'm like, nah, I'm good with this. 10 years later, and God knows how many $1,000s later, I'm here. So yeah, folks, you're gonna buy one thing, but you probably know this, Aaron. You're buying a better mic, you're buying a computer, you're buying an interface, and so that's where I'm at now. But yeah, it's a passion of mine that I've had for many years for podcasting.
Yeah. Beautiful. Excellent. And I still am. I'm a teacher. So I've been the type of guy to always love to use my voice to educate people. Talking all day just makes me happy. I grew up with, I'm only 32 years old. So I grew up with, talk radio in the 90s. And I just always kind of had the ear for it, And then during the pandemic, I was on Facebook. And I noticed that a lot of blind people, as you've noticed, they ask a lot of questions in the various, Facebook groups. And I actually started recording responses to the questions. Someone would ask, well, I don't know, should I get a guide dog, right? And I would create an answer and an audio file. And then it kind of occurred to me, these people that keep asking me questions, that's like an audience. And then if you listen to the audio, that's like a podcast. So, I was always aware of podcasting, but then I really just dove into it, just starting out small, one episode at a time. It doesn't need to be fancy. They just need to be able to hear you.
Exactly.
And it needs to be clear, and you need to have some idea, some theme. But it's podcasting. The reason why podcasting is powerful is because it's simple. It's a recording of us basically getting off what we need to get off our chest and having conversations.
Yep.
So what's your so to geek out about the microphones? What's your dream microphone?
My dream microphone is the one that went blank right now, but the one that Joe Rogan uses.
I know what it. Yeah, that's a Shure. Probably it's a Shure SM7B or one of those Shure microphones.
I think that's the one. Exactly what it is. You're perfect.
Yeah. You know which one I like? I like the Shure Mic Victor 7, the MV7, because it's a little smaller, just as good because it's a Shure product. But it's it's a USB, and I really like using the USB on my iMac here. So my dream is the Shure MV7. Oh, Well, I was preparing to ask you because I knew you were going to say, "Well, I have an MV7." Is what I was anticipating a response. Oh, I have a Shure MV7. You were supposed to say, and then I was supposed to say, "Well, how do I get it? Well,
Right.
how many other ones do you have in the box?" He said, "Send me one of those things." Well, you can't have all the microphones.
Yeah, that's my dream. That's my dream.
Well,
Microphone.
good. Well, look, keep applying each time Shure sends out the email saying, "Hey, click here to enter the drawing, to win the Shure microphone. The MV7 is the one I want." Keep trying to win those because
Yeah.
eventually one of us will eventually win it, I guess, or one of us will buy it eventually. But that's cool.
Well, I have a friend actually. I have a friend of mine that he during the pandemic, he purchased two of them for his podcast, and then recently I found out that he's getting out of it. But I lost his contact information, so I'm trying to get a hold of him. Say, hey, if you want to get rid of one of those or sell it, I'll take it.
Well, no. Aaron's opinion will take it, especially if it's the especially if it's the Shure Mike Victor 7.
It is.
Especially if
It is. It is.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
put them on. Wait a minute. Wait. Here's how podcasting works. Don't mention the microphone. Get him on my show. I'll interview him, and then I'll have some system where I won't let him hang up until he admits how he got the microphone, or so we'll have to do some sort of skit like that.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's
And they're
funny.
like, I think he told me they're $500 or something. I forgot how much he told me.
The one that Joe Rogan uses, boy, I always say Joe's one of my favorites to listen to as a podcast host. I love listening to other podcasters.
Yes.
I love Joe Rogan. He's so good. Joe, Lex, Jordan Harbinger. Stuff you should know. I mean, I'm an avid consumer of great content as well. All those guys are great. I would love to be interviewed by any of those people. Although I say that now, but then I should probably say, well, be careful what I wish for, right?
Exactly. And the good thing, the thing about podcasting that people should know which is unique, or one of the characters I've seen is that, that I'll use Joe Rogan for example. He'll come up with like about history about the climate, and I'm like, how does he know that kind of stuff? How does it stick? But you know what? Be honest with you, when you're in that environment and that type of conversations all the time, it'll stick with you. So, for example, if someone says a certain topic, right away in my head it pops up because I've had those conversations in the past. So it's kind of neat. That's something like how you said it's a platform where we could just get stuff off our chest, but some of that information, believe it or not, sticks, which is cool. That's the best thing about it.
Well, you know what else is funny too about structuring podcasts, especially the ones that are numbered. A lot of the creators at the top of Spotify number the episodes. I never did because I don't really need to. I don't really want to. I want people to just kind of dive into the chapter book and just start devouring, just start digesting my conversations. But one thing that I'll tell students all the time at Company X where I work, I'll say, if you really want to learn about that, go listen to this number of this podcast. That number pops up. Yeah, that number will answer that question. Some of these podcasts are just stunning. But more to that. And anyway, but back to what you were saying. So. Yeah, someone was asking me today, and they were quite confused because I host also here on Aaron's Opinion. We also do a special segment, a section on Sundays. This will be the long form interview on Thursday. But on Sunday, we do philosophy and religion with, you'll meet him when you join my WhatsApp group, but Pastor Eden the Wise. And someone was asking, Aaron, what is the real difference between internet radio and podcasts? And I told them, I think it's a very complicated answer, but a simple one. Internet radio stations, and I'm sure the stations you've been on are wonderful. I know they're great. Generally, the difference between radio and podcast. Radio is about how many listens. Podcasts is about how many downloads and how many reviews and how many 5 stars. And it's more, in my opinion, impressionable. It's more about the impression and overall impact. But what do you think, George? What do you think is the key differences that you've learned between internet radio culture and podcast culture? What do you think?
So my opinion might be a little bit different,
Good.
Aaron,
Hopefully it
because
is.
well, that's too much of a difference. Excuse me. But for me, my experience, right? Like everybody has their own personal experience, and that's where that interprets into life. For me, internet radio is more of a real time, right now kind of discussion, where someone has to actually tune in. For example, let's say, I'm on internet radio, like me, I had a website and a link. The people would click on that to listen to the show, right? Or a podcast is more of a static. It's there. You can download it the numbers are both important on both ends because for me, when I had the internet radio, I had to have numbers to get sponsors, which I did. I had a local attorney that would sponsor me. Vice versa was the podcast, same thing. You want numbers. So numbers is very important. And there's two things. Numbers, or three things really. Numbers, the quality of the content, and consistency. Keep it consistent. I'll tell you from experience, I remember one time that during the pandemic, like you were mentioning, Mr. Aaron, I was doing a podcast with No Vision Internet Radio. I mean, a podcast. I'm sorry, a show, no internet radio, No Vision Internet Radio, and I was doing it every week, faithfully, every week. And all of a sudden, I noticed that my numbers were going up. Well, for me, they were good numbers. For other people, that might be just whatever. I was hitting between 500, 600, 700 a week hits. I'm like, wow, that's pretty neat. But sure enough, when I stopped going consistent, they dropped off. So now I'm hitting maybe 250 to 400, which is decent, but that's not good numbers, right? But what I'm saying is consistency, content, and numbers. And then also, as I guess because I'm more of a audio person because I'm blind, the sound. The sound has to be very good, very clean, very, try to keep as a podcaster, one of the things that tell people that reach out to me is be consistent, have good quality, and try not to have stuff in the background. Dogs barking or kids yelling or, that might be a turnoff for some people.
Or it might actually enhance the experience hearing natural noises around you. That can also be comforting to people too. It just
True.
depends on what the sound is.
It depends.
But I think people should be comfortable. Sometimes I don't know. I live with my family. Sometimes someone will sneeze in the room next door, or TV sound off in the distance, or things like that. Those are natural sounds that are in our environment, and I want to give them to you as the listener because this is a real show. This isn't some scripted thing. This is reality.
Yes,
so I am
exactly.
trying to paint. Reality. Well, okay. So now, no vision internet radio.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that one. So now, do you still work with them? Or are they still like running the station? Like, what's going on with?
No, that one went out. That's why I've transitioned. I'm transitioning to my Let's Talk stuff, my own live. Not really an internet show. I call it an internet show, not internet radio. An internet show for me is something that's live, real time, where you have to click in. Because for me, Aaron, it's not the same. Now, I'm old. Just to be clear, I'm older, so I guess my thought process might be a little bit different. So for me, I'm from the old school where everything has to be live, real time now. If it's podcast, which is static, which is fine, it doesn't have the same pizzazz or same, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but like right now we're having a conversation. I'm comfortable, you're comfortable. Things are more fluid, more organic. When it's in a set environment like a podcast, you could edit. Oops, like you said, there was a dog bark or a sneeze. For me, you're right. That's more of a natural process, a natural dialogue, and I think that makes it more interesting for someone that's listening. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Is there, and that's what I like. I like natural discussions, natural. So for me, I like live, and people always ask me about why live, because you could mess up. Fine, that's good. That's part of the process. Not everybody's perfect. So for me, I edge on the side of live broadcasting than to podcast. I mean, of course, I'll do podcasting. That's where I started from. But I guess that I'm getting older. I want the live stuff. And not only that, Aaron, it brings in numbers. So if you start doing live stuff, people want to listen. It's like, okay, let's see what happens this time on the show. And, be relaxed, be happy, joke around. For me, I try not to just or bring up controversial stuff because that might offend some people. And what I mean by that, like politics and religion, because one person might say, well, my religion is better than yours, or my particular party affiliation is better than yours. So I try not to go into those topics just for that reason, because I just don't want people getting upset. I want them to enjoy the conversation.
Sure. Sure, that is very interesting. So, on your show, let's talk stuff. So when you say let's talk stuff, what are some stuff that you really want to? What are some topics that are important to you? Some things that you really want me to be aware of. What are some stuff that you want to talk to me about and get my opinion and perspective on?
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that. So when people ask me, what do you mean, let's talk stuff? What does that mean? Exactly, stuff. Stuff means could range from accessibility, like we had this past show, or just stuff in general, sports. Because see what it is, Aaron? I want people to understand or realize, listeners, that yes, we might be blind or we might be low vision or visually impaired, VI, but it didn't have to be the focus of our life. It didn't have to be like everything has to be about visual impairment and blindness. I know we live it. I understand that. But there's things outside that realm, which means education, relationships, transportation, stuff on the news, or just sports, but from our perspective. Because I'm not sure if, do you have low vision or light or blindness?
I have some usable vision, but I have glaucoma, so
Okay.
I've been through it.
So the reason I come from this perspective, like I said, life, I'm going to sound like an old man here. I'm like one of those old geezers in the life is what you experience now, your past life experience. So, for example, my experience, let's say, with this particular football team. Oh, I love the Cowboys because that's my team since I was young, and that's my perspective. Or a certain food, or a certain smell. That's what brings me memory. That's brings me joy. So, what I'm saying that is perspectives, and I'll kind of a little philosophy here. One day when I was taking philosophy in college, the teacher walks in and she touched the table. She was like, is this table, this is when I could still see a little bit. She was, is this table brown and is it flat? And I'm like, what kind of class is this? And she was, if I touch it, can you feel it? Or can I feel it? And I'm like, is my professor drunk? In my head, I'm like, what is wrong with her? But that kind of relates to us as blind individuals or low vision. What I mean by is, one day I was with a friend of mine, and we're in the front yard, and I said, "Hey, Charles, your tree seems to be dying. The trunk is very bright or very light brown, and it seems like it's falling apart. The bark is coming off." And Charles was blind from birth, and he turns to me. He goes, "George, what are you talking about?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I don't know what colors are. I don't know what a tree is." And in my head, I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what a tree is? Yeah, I don't know how it looks or the color brown. And it clicked. Oh, wow. So we might say the color green or the red car or this or that, but someone that was born blind has no concept, even with numbers, you know what I'm saying, or letters. I don't know what an A or a B or a C. I know Braille. And I'm like, wow. So what I mean by that is that's what kind of pushes my discussion now is perspective. Because my perspective in general now, okay, I'm talking in general, might be different than yours, Aaron, because of my life experience.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying that. That's why I try not to touch on topics that are hot topics because I don't want to offend no one because my perspective or my opinion might be different. And I don't mean to be like mean or disrespectful, but if someone comes and tells me that this particular thing is the greatest thing in the world, well, how about this one? Or how about that one? Well, no, mine's the best. Well, that's what I'm saying. I just want people to sit down and listen and just have a good time while we're listening.
Right. Right. Yeah, I've noticed that around the blindness community, there's a great spectrum of basically of exactly what you're speaking of opinions and perspectives and experiences. Yeah.
You know what I've seen a lot too, Aaron, we were talking before we started the show, is there's a lot of Facebook posts or Facebook groups, which I've been a part of. I've been right now, I think 12 or 11 of them. And I noticed a lot of the discussions, and I'm assuming they're younger folks, and I could be wrong. If I am, I do apologize. But they focus too much on their disability. Like, I can't do this, I can't do that. My wife says this, and my husband says this. And I'm like, wow, you need to understand that blind is what you make of it. I'm like myself. I'm married. I don't have kids, but we have a home. We own our home. I do the yard work even though I can't see. Sometimes, of course, I get help. I do some of the stuff here at the house, like if something breaks. But what I'm saying is, we focus too much on their blindness, and sometimes we need to stop that because yes, you're visually impaired or blind, but that's so what? That's only a part of you. That's not who you are. And that's why I think we need to just have those discussions too about.
We do.
Yes, there's ways to get around things. Just have those independent living skills.
Right. Absolutely. I was speaking last week. I don't remember when it was, but I was speaking last week with the RP show. And they're a channel, basically a podcast, but mainly a YouTube channel that, is exactly what it sounds like. Two guys with RP. And they were telling me how when you have RP, it's a lot harder because, in their opinion, it's a lot harder because you lose your vision gradually when you're a teenager, and it's very traumatic. One guy went from, riding motorcycles down the highway to not being able to drive a car at all.
Yes, sir.
So, the fact that this is, the fact that we're having this conversation really illustrates how there's so many different experiences that people can have. In my case, with me being born blind with glaucoma, although my vision was repaired, I was never a sighted person. So I never really held on to being sighted, which is hard for a sighted person to understand why I wouldn't care about that, but.
Well, like
right.
my best vision at one point was 20/40.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
No, I was never 20/40.
So I went from that to where I'm at now, and it, believe it or not, it made me respect where I'm at more. Does that make sense? Because I went from sighted, I'm at where I'm at now, and I understand. I have limitations, but we have to stop just sitting there and worrying about that. We need to move on and live our lives. Okay, and what I mean by that is, sometimes I see in these posts where people worry about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
My aunt or my grandma or my sister. Don't worry about that. Worry about yourself. Accept it. Move on. If people want to talk about you or don't want to talk about you or don't want to help you, fine. Move on. And that's the thing that we need to just, I guess, going back to what I'm saying, I'm beating it with a dead horse, is let's not focus too much on their disability. Let's just focus on other stuff. And that's what the thing about let's talk stuff. I want to do that. Yeah, we'll talk about accessibility, of course. But let's not make it too much. Let's talk about sports from our perspective. For example, I asked my uncle the other day, because the football season's starting up. And I asked him, hey, Uncle, how do the uniform for the Cowboys look like? And he described it to me. So what I'm trying to say is, yeah, I'm blind and I could just sit there and mope about it. And, I can't see the screen. And, okay, that's fine. I understand that. I've been there. I've done that. Even to the point, Aaron, when I was transitioning from sighted to blindness, I'm not going to lie. And I've told people this. I told my family. I told friends. The thought of suicide did cross my mind. I'm like, how can I live like this? Because I was such a visual person, a sighted person. How can I live like this? Not be able to see this or do that. But then when I learned, I accepted, I processed it. Now I'm at where I'm at. Now I have no problem. And people, even my aunt will tell me sometimes, are you sure you're blind? Because I'll move around the house, I'll wash the dishes and like no problem because I know my environment. That's what I'm saying. Once you get comfortable with your environment, you accept what's going on, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. It takes a process,
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people that deny. I've seen that too, where on Facebook they'll say like someone denies being blind, or a family member denies that someone else is blind. That's a very common thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, yeah.
Yes, sir. But like I said, and people would say, like, I've heard what you said, Aaron. I've seen it. That they'll say, people in the post, they'll say, well, someone says, are you really blind? Do you really need a dog? Do you really need a cane? And that's what I'm saying. Don't worry about that. Worry about yourself. Use those tools that you need to do your. If you have a guide dog, great. If you have a white cane, great. But by the way, I'm sorry about the background. They're starting with the fireworks already over here. So.
Oh, that's my end.
No, me too over here too. So, we have a neighbor that goes crazy every year. But anywho, like I said, the more time that we look back and worry about what's going on behind us, we're never going to move forward and look forward. So that's what I tell people. Don't worry about it. I understand it. I guess I got a thick skin because I've gone through the process. I, accepted it. And not everybody, I'm not saying everybody's the same. I get it. I understand it. But when you understand or get to that point in life where you're like, you know what? I'm good. I'm good where I'm at. If people can't accept it or they question it, oh well, what can I do? And the reason I have that philosophy, Aaron, when I lost my sight, no matter how much crying I do, no matter how much praying I do, no matter how much worrying I do, I lost my vision. Now I have to accept it. So once you accept it, then you're like, okay, I'm good,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So okay. So you covered that kind of philosophical topic, and then what are some other stuff, since you like talking about stuff? What are some stuff that you might want to hear, or maybe want to hear like my opinion or my perspective or my experience about? What are some stuff that you have questions for me about?
I have a question for you. What do you think about when it comes to? I'm a big proponent of this here locally, anyways. Advocacy. In regards to if something happens, what do you do to that or for that?
In other words, I mean, please give me more context?
Sure.
Right.
So my thing is about self-advocacy. So if something happens regarding being discriminated or whatever, what's your opinion regarding self-advocacy?
If we're talking about, I mean, if you want my opinion about discrimination or...
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm sure you faced it yourself. I mean, I've been discriminated against many, 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 many times, and by various people, or in various, I guess, ways or styles or various little things. The overwhelming truth is that I've been discriminated against for 32 years. It's just now that I'm 32, I notice.
Yes, sir.
When you're a child or a teenager or even in your 20s, you can just shake it off. But I do notice that I observe the discrimination more now that I'm in my 30s. It's more noticeable to me because I notice it more, and I also think that society is becoming more discriminatory. I think.
Yes,
So I think it's getting worse, and I think when it happens, it's worse, and I think I'm noticing it more because I'm an adult. If a child gets discriminated against, the child doesn't really notice. They go home, they forget about it, and it's usually something little that you can shake off. But the problem is, the older I get, the more I notice that discrimination affects more things. It's more complicated. It's more meat and potatoes. It's a bigger deal.
Yes.
My theory is that there's, and I do not think you're going to agree with me, which is fine. But my theory is, and please listen to how kind of hear out my whole thesis here. There is nothing we can do about discrimination. And here's what I mean. People are always able to tell that someone else is different, from the beginning, from the dawn of time, people were able to tell, oh, that person's in my family. That other person's not in my family. That's discrimination, right? So I think that actually discrimination, I would argue philosophically speaking, discrimination, although it's obviously unethical now and wrongful now, obviously, it is in essence a necessity and a survival skill for people. So I would beg the question, or I would phrase the argument that I don't think there is a whole lot that can be done unless actual laws are broken, and then you have to do something. But if no laws are broken and the person is just discriminatory, just being rude and discriminatory, my perspective is there's not a whole lot that can be done. And if there is, I don't want to invest my time and energy in that person. I don't want to give that person my business. There have been many businesses that have not wanted me or have, in my opinion, discriminated against me. And I went home a little annoyed, but then I said to myself, well, great. So then I don't have to deal with you then. If you don't want me, I don't want you, So that's kind of my perspective. But of course, it's important to stand up for yourself when you need to. And it's also important to walk away when you need to. What do you think?
Yes. And let me ask you this question.
Yes.
And it kind of goes with what you're saying, actually. What's the biggest barrier for individuals with disabilities? And I'm talking about any disabilities, from autism to blindness to mobility.
Well, we can't say, well, with any and all, that's in essence your question is, kind of a borderline fallacy because you're trying to group, right, all disabilities.
No, but there's a reason why. It's just-
Okay,
there's a
okay.
question.
Tell me the reason. Okay,
Okay.
here.
So when I ask that question, and then
Right.
when I do talks too, and I ask, what's the biggest barrier, right,
Right.
for anybody? And then right away, inaccessible websites and doorways are not wide enough, or sidewalks, or the light sensory, or I let them talk. I'm like, all right, cool, all right. Nope. Well, what's the biggest perception? What's the biggest barrier? I go, perception. Like what you just said, perception. Because no matter what, if I walk in with a white cane or a guide dog, right away, perception. They might see you, Aaron. They might see me, and they might like, wow, this person's enabled, disabled, can't do much. Until they find out about the person, like myself or you, Mr. Aaron. That's why I don't tell people my background, my work history, because until they ask. Because when I don't tell them, they assume. But when I tell them I used to work for the Department of Labor, I worked for the Texas Attorney General as a child support officer, and then right away, you did, but you're blind. Like, wow, that's a big thing, but which is fine. That's a a time to teach them. But for me, you're right in the way that's right, because once a perception is set, there's nothing you could do. They're going to talk to you the way they talk to you, which is fine. Like you said, the business, they want my money, I'll go somewhere else. My money's still green anywhere else, which is no big deal. But when it comes to self-advocacy, when you can make that change, try to do that change. When it comes, now my experience, like I said, my life experience, Mr. Aaron, is different from anybody that's listening, because we all have different experiences. My point of advocacy has been where I've seen changes here in my local area because of advocacy, what we've been involved in. When I say we, it's a group of us. I've seen the changes systemic-wise. Now, mind you what I said, systemic versus individuals, totally different conversations. Okay? When you say individual, that's where perception comes in, and we're pretty much out the window. And you, like you said, Mr. Aaron, people are listening, been discriminated against. Yes. But when it comes to systemic change, that's where numbers kick in. I've seen it. Like JAWS, I'll give you an example. Here in El Paso, none of the libraries, the rec centers, the senior centers, they have computers. No JAWS. Nothing. So we came up to them, to the city. We advocated. Now all senior centers, all rec centers, and all libraries have JAWS. At least one computer. Right? But what I mean, that's systemic versus individualized. And individualized, I'll give you my experience when it first started for me. Where I remember what really kind of instilled that advocacy in me. I applied for an apartment. This is back, many moons ago. When I was real young, I was working at Kmart. And by the way, do you have Kmart's in New York? I'm just curious. Just a side discussion here. But anyway.
Well, side discussion. I'm not in New York, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're still in New York. My bad.
At the moment, we say undisclosed location, but nowhere near New York. So I don't know. What are you doing asking me about Kmart? There was all sorts of jokes in my. I'm not going to tell them. There was all sorts of jokes about Kmart when I used to live near Washington D.C. All sorts of jokes about it. But Kmart's been out of business. So
yeah.
So wow, you're a lot older than me. What Kmart? Wait, how is that pronounced? Oh, Kmart. Oh, that's what I say. Okay, all right.
So I was working at Kmart, and I wanted to get my own apartment, and my mom said, "Yeah, sure." So we went around this area looking at apartments, and I found one. Filled out the application, get a deposit, fill out the background application, and nothing happened. No response. So I get it a few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and then went to the office. And as I walked in, and this is when I still had vision, I had real thick glasses, real thick. I'm like,
me too.
Like real thick glasses. So I walked in, and I see the young man to my right. And as soon as I walk in, he put his hand up, like stop, and he pointed to go out. I'm like, what? Why does he want me to go out? Then to my left, I saw, I guess, the manager. She was in her office. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. I go, what does he want to do, a fight or what? So he kept pointing, like, go out. Okay, so I went out, and I'm standing by the door, and he comes out. Real nice young man, really nice. He goes, Mr. Zavala, you got approved. I'm like, great. And why did you guys call me? She goes, yeah, but the manager is not going to let you move in. I'm like, why not? Because your vision. She's afraid that you might burn down the place while you're cooking. I'm like, wow, what? That was the first experience of taste of discrimination. I'm like, really? And yeah, I didn't get the apartment because I was low vision and I might burn down the place. I'm like, wow. So that's my very first experience. And when you encounter that in life, that changes a lot of stuff. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that hasn't happened to me yet, but that's very traumatic and very, very frustrating and very traumatic when that happens. But yeah, I've heard about that. That's a big problem for blind people, especially the first time they get an apartment. It's a big problem. Yeah.
Or even the employment. Don't get me started with that. My first
Oh,
experience.
no. Don't get me. You're on my show. Don't get me started. Don't get you. You don't even know. I mean, you've done a magnificent job, as any guest has. Trust me when I tell you, you don't know the half of it. You don't know the half of my story. Trust me.
When I was in the call center, I was using JAWS. I'm not gonna say the call center because we went to court. So I'm sitting there in the class, and the teacher would ask questions, and nobody would answer. A bunch of young kids. So I answer the question, and he would come to me. How do you remember all that stuff? You have to. You like I said, what I said earlier. Get those skills, the memory skill, or just stuff that I remember, and you have to put in your head. So during the training class, the way it works, you get trained for 2 weeks, and after the 2 weeks, you transition to the work floor for the call center. So we're coming towards the end of the 2 weeks. And I noticed that there was a lot of difficulty with JAWS being incorporated into their platform, into their portal. So, towards the end of the training, the young man walks up to me, he taps me on the shoulder, goes, George, I need to talk to you outside, whispering. So, okay, so I went to the hallway. He's like, heads up, right now at break at 5 o'clock, they're going to put you into the office, and they're going to fire you. Fire me? For what? And I come to work, I come dressed nice, and I even wear a tie. I don't know if I'm supposed to wear a tie at call center, but... And he's like, no, because of JAWS. I'm like, JAWS? Because, yeah. Really? So I walk into the office now, mind you, okay? I walk into the office, I sit down, the plant manager's in front of me. In the office, I felt like I had my spidey senses. I feel like somebody behind me, like people to my left and right. And I'm like, what's going on? And then she's like, well, Mr. Zavala, and I go, hold on. Why are there two people behind me? I could tell. Oh, that's security. Really? Okay. And like, well, Mr. Zavala, we're gonna have to let you go because of the technology. And I'm like, okay, let me ask you a question, ma'am. I asked her 3 times, Erin. Did I do something? Did I break the rule? Did I break policy or procedures? If I did, let me know. She goes, no. Technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. Yep.
Something before I moved to where I am now, I'll tell you a bit more about it off air. But before I moved here, I lived in Maryland, and something very similar happened where some woman, I forget the whole story, but yeah, they fired her because they didn't want to provide a certain software. So they said, well, we're firing you because of the software. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah, that's very ridiculous and very silly. Yeah, but that happens very, very frequently. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, they paid for the tile in their house, so that's all I will say. Let that go there. But yes, it's happened to me twice, actually. Twice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But so for me, let me ask you a question,
Of course, go ahead.
You asked me, now I want to flip the chairs on you.
Please do.
Because I'm curious.
Please do.
And I asked some of my guests, what got you into podcasting?
Well, like I was saying, during the pandemic, I was taking breaks during my teaching work, and I was answering people's questions when they were asking questions on Facebook by sending them voice messages, and then I turned those messages into podcast episodes.
No, what I mean is, I'm sorry, I should rephrase my question. Let me retract my question. I meant to say, what the name, the concept of Erin's Opinions, how did that come to be?
Because my name is Aaron, and I have a lot of opinions, but really it's not about my opinion, it's about me giving George the chance to share his opinion. So it says on the label there, it says Aaron's, but I want you to remember that it's George's. It's about giving the guests the chance and the privilege, because being on a podcast is a privilege,
Yes, sir.
I want to give the guests a privilege to share their perspective. And I really think that the fact that we had to talk about all these different discrimination and all these different problems that both of us have gone through, I think the fact that we've had to talk about it shows how badly you need to keep doing what you're doing in radio, and I need to keep doing what I'm doing in podcasting, because society needs this knowledge. There's possibly no greater antidote or no greater medicine to discrimination, if there ever was one, than providing videos and podcasts that give people a little bit of knowledge. That's a huge, just having a show like this is a huge thing that will hopefully reduce discrimination and increase knowledge.
Yep.
At least
and knowledge is power. And not only that, too, for me, Aaron, that seems you kind of touched on this a little bit, but for me also having these type of discussions, either podcast or live or however the conversation is to, so others understand. When I say others, those who are listening, that, oh, you know what? I guess I'm not the only one. Or, oh, I thought I was the only one having that problem. Because to me, one of the things that the El Paso Vibe that we encourage is support. That yes, you're having issues right now, but guess what? You're not the only one. We're here to help. We're here to talk to you. And that's what in these kind of conversations they're in, that to tell people, you know what, you're okay. You're going to be okay. I know you're stressing out because you lost your vision. Relax. Go through the process together if you want to. But I think having this conversation helps that too.
Absolutely, it does. And, people need to listen to these episodes slowly over time. It takes a long time to build up enough knowledge in the library for people to really come to you and get
Yes,
that.
sir.
It takes a really long time for everything to catch on. But
Yes, sir. You're right.
so good. Yeah, how many other blind people have how many other podcasts have you been on, like, as a guest like this?
I've been on one, what's the latest one I've been on? The latest one, I'm trying to think. Well, it's here in El Paso. That gentleman I was telling that has the two podcasts, or the two microphones.
Yeah, I'm really interested in him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he has one. It's called, that one is more like an Indian name. What I mean by Indian is a Native American
Cool.
name. It means like a bird. I've been on his podcast recently. There's another one here called El Paso. What is it called? I went blank. Wow, I went blank. But I know the last one there was that one about the bird. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the bird. It was some Swantica or Quasca or something like that. That's the last one I was on. Last year, I had the opportunity to talk to a young lady from Kentucky. Her is seeing blind. That could be found on YouTube also. You might want to reach out to her too, Mr. Aaron. She's a really good person to have on. She had me on her show. I think she's mostly talks about independent living skills. But that's the thing. That's one that you might want to look at too also.
Right. Very good. Very, very good. So what are some dream podcasts that you hope to be a guest on in the future for you?
I want to talk to Ed Blumacher. I don't know if you know who he is. And
Nope.
Brian, I forgot that. They have one out of, that's why I probably thought New York. I do apologize. They're out of New York. They're called Ed Blumacher and Brandon. They're on this thing on Facebook called Flying Blind or Flying Blind. What is it called? Flying Blind. They have a podcast, but this particular project is they're going to baseball fields, baseball parks. Like right now, they were in Dallas. They're going to Houston, and what they do, they talk about their adventures of going through the airport and discrimination, and they had an incident in Dallas, by the way. But I forgot the name of their podcast. It's Ed Fumacher and Brian Fisker. If somebody's listening, I do apologize if they know the podcast. It's out of New York. It's been around for a long, long time. And they talk about technology and whatnot. Me was to have those two individuals on my podcast. That would be cool. That would really be cool to have those two people on my podcast.
Absolutely.
And then, you know who else? I don't know if you know Mata Mouse from Applevis. I don't know if you heard of him.
No.
Yeah, his name is Mata Mouse. He's the one that does most of the podcasts for Applevis. I would like to have him. That would be a really cool guest to have on my show too.
Okay. Good. Well, we can see about maybe getting in touch with some of these people. If you guys have ideas or ways that I can get in touch with them, that is a challenge with podcasting. Sometimes it can be hard to get in touch with various hosts. So that can be difficult. Not only do you have to find them, but then you have to figure out, well, how do they want to be contacted? That's a whole culture all on its own. Some people like the form, the email, no. This one you got to slide into the Instagram DM for this one, but not the other guy. The other guy doesn't check the Instagram. That really grinds my gears, because you got people that say they're a podcast, they want to be contacted on all these social medias, but not that not that website. No, not that one. The other one.
Let me ask you this, Eric. Now that you said social media, do you think there's too much social media? Because I'm going to try to remember the ones I know. Okay, it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, Clubhouse. What else is there? There must be some other ones. Snapchat, I think. So what do you think of all these social media avenues?
It's not what I think about the avenues. The avenues are fine. The question you should have asked is, what do you think about the people that use those avenues?
There you go.
I think those people are scary. There's some scary people on these apps. The apps I'm not blaming the app. I'm blaming the people that use it. It's the people.
Yeah, and it should, because I'm telling you, you run across this one person, you're like, wow, what did I say? They're all like going on, I had one person just started jumping on me. I'm like, what did I say? I went back to the post. What did I post? But you're right. It's just, like I said, different people, different experiences, and I respect that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people are just, there are times where I think that people need to get a little bit thicker skin in life, and not take everything so personally, and I'm someone that has very thick skin, and I'm glad that you spoke up and mentioned your sensitivity about not talking about controversy. That's because oftentimes here at Aaron's Opinion, we embrace controversy, but thank you for speaking up and letting me know that you aren't okay with that, because that needed to be a big warning for me to remember in my mind. Well, if I talk to you, I need to steer away from
let me rephrase that. I'm not afraid of talking about it. I'll talk about it. Trust me. Ask my family members. My opinion of my individual discussion, but on the show itself, no, because the show, I wanted to have a certain brand, a certain name, a certain texture to it. But me, I'll be very honest with you, Mr. I have, my thing is, for example, I'll tell you an example, and I hope not to offend anyone. So, at a recent family gathering, one of my aunts is real dedicated to a specific religion. And she was talking about her religion, and people within the family were getting uncomfortable, which is okay. So I asked her, I go, what makes your religion better than mine or hers or this one or that one? Well, this and this and this and this. But yes, you need to understand that what you're saying about your religion, I could say the same about mine, or they could say the same about theirs. So that you need to understand that. You might be saying something that you believe in, which I respect, but you also need to respect what I believe in. It also comes to politics, right? If you're right wing or left wing, I respect them. I'll respect it. I'll give you my opinion, but it didn't mean that my opinion is correct. But I'm just giving you my, what I feel. But like I said, that's what I'm saying. To me, when it comes to my podcast, I kind of keep that on the restricted. But me personally, I got no problem with that. Because sometimes those discussions need to be heard, and people don't like you for those discussions, which is fine. Because for me, it is what it is. Like, when someone says, and I don't know if it's done this to you, Aaron, or anyone listening, somebody actually came up to me one time and put their hand on my head and said, I need to pray for you, that you will see. We're going to pray. I felt very uncomfortable because it's middle of a room. A lot of people were in the room, and this person just walked out of the blue and put their hand on me. And I know they're doing it for good intent, but it made me feel very uncomfortable. So when they finished, I didn't say nothing. I pulled them aside. I go, number one, I felt very uncomfortable. And number two, I don't need praying. I'm good. I'm comfortable where I'm at. If this is how I am, I have accepted it. Now you need to accept it. I think you're doing the praying more for you that you're doing for me. And they got upset. Because
Right.
I told them, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but no matter the level of prayer, I am not going to see. I accepted that.
That's
Okay?
That's right.
Now, if you feel better
right.
yourself, pray for me, great. But it made me feel very uncomfortable. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. So me, I have no problem talking about that. But when
Good.
it comes to the show, I just
Yeah.
want to keep a certain texture to that.
So George, you've done an amazing job, as all of my guests do. I want to give you time to ask me only one more question to really make me sweat to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster. What do you really want to know?
Yeah, let me ask you. Now we're talking about controversy. What do you feel that the most, what's the word I want to say, volatile conversation to have right now, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I think you're on the right track. I think religion is one, politics is the other, family values is a huge one. You know, what's going on with healthcare is a huge one, huge controversy. Global affairs is a huge controversy.
Let me ask you this question. Okay, what one topic you won't talk about?
Ah,
Oh, sorry about that.
oh, that's your end. Oh.
That's my end. Let me pause my what you're talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are very. I mean, I will basically talk about almost anything. I cannot really answer. I cannot really tell you what something I wouldn't want to talk about because I don't know really. But I mean, I'm willing to talk about anything, but I'm also willing to offend people. So that's a very unusual quality that I have, you know.
And that's offending people is because, again, you're talking from your perspective, right? Like, for example,
Right.
whatever it might be, you might say, "Well, I think of this way." That's only based on my life experience, where someone else might get upset. And one thing I've never really understood, Mr. Aaron, is how people could turn that conversation very negative and very personal real quick. And I'm like, why? We're just having conversations.
Because the person is embarrassed or upset about themselves, and then they need to deflect the conversation. Yeah. Well, George, we had a wonderful conversation. I would like to bring it to a close of another great episode here on Aaron's Opinion. So, George, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. They could email me at george@theaccessibilitycorner.com. That's george@theaccessibilitycorner.com, or on Facebook. Just look for George Zavala, or look for Let's Talk Stuff on Facebook. And Twitter, I don't think I'm on Twitter. I just my personal stuff on Twitter. Instagram, not really. Don't really use Instagram. What are you? How about you? Let me ask you this question, Mr. Aaron. So for people that are listening on my end, where can they contact you?
1240-681-9869. Aaron's Opinion 6@gmail.com. At Aaron's Opinion on Instagram. Aaron's Opinion Podcasting Community public Facebook group. And Aaron's Opinion podcast page, unless you're already friends with me on Facebook. That's basically
Did you just give out your number?
That's my professional number.
Okay, I'm about to say, well, where did you just give out your number there, really? I'm like, I don't do that. That's a brave man, Mr. Aaron. But no, thank you, Mr. Aaron. I appreciate you for you giving me this opportunity to talk, to have this conversation. I liked it. It was very fluid, and it went by quick. I think we're done for the hour already.
We are.
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll keep in touch. All right.
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Cool. Always welcome here. All right, everyone. Well, on the podcast side, thanks so much. Stay safe out there. And as I like to say, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow. Thank you for those of you who are still watching on YouTube. Thank you for joining us this evening. We just want to say thank you and like it, share it, subscribe it, comment below. That really helps. Again, if you want to be in the virtual audience next time, keep an eye out for the Zoom invitation that I'll put up in Aaron's Opinion Podcasting Community, Aaron's Opinion Podcast, or really anywhere around social media. All right. Take care, everyone. Stay safe out there. And yes, as I like to say, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.